There's a question from one of our former colleagues, Mary Kay Magistad. Uh, when you were foreign editor at NPR, 20 years after you'd started in Cambodia, what struck you about what was the same and what was different for young female correspondents, particularly those covering conflict? And what about today? Are you more surprised by what progress there's been in the professional opportunities and respect given to female correspondents, or that there isn't more?
Okay, I'm going to embarrass all of you. Mary Kay. What I was happy about was that it was accepted that women could do it. But what rankled me was that too many of them, including Miss Cooper and Sylvia Poggioli, were not given the status they deserved because they were married to men. And so why did they need to be staff? And I had to go to the board of directors to plead that these women deserve staff and that you can't do this. I mean, Sylvia Poggioli and Cooper, it was crazy. And then with Mary, and then I'll really embarrass you, Anne. There was another correspondent in Africa when Anne was in Johannesburg, who's always had a problem whenever a war broke out. And
Sorry.
And I had to say, can't you send Dan Cooper? And I finally removed him from his post because the staff correspondent would rely on a woman to go into war. And Mary Kay, the thing about all of you women was that I always had to call and make sure that you guys were eating, that you overworked. I will end with the thing, but so you were on your way, but not enough of you were staff. And that's drove me nuts. Now today, I think the biggest problem is the balance. It's so hard still for women to be foreign correspondents without the kind of life balance that they need. And then secondly, of course, is that the budgets have been cut, and it doesn't matter if you're male or female. There's way too many freelancers who are way too vulnerable.
Yeah, freelancers, major issue, male and female.
Right, it's horrible.
Somebody has wait a minute, there's a question in here from somebody who says they want to use the book in their class. So I want to try to make sure to get to that, but I have to find it. Sorry about that. Beth, this is from Steve Raymer.
Yes.
Beth, I plan to use your book in my class reporting war and terrorism. What do you want young women, 20-somethings, to take away from your book? Thanks.
That there are voices that they hadn't heard before. That, for instance, everybody knows who Martha Gellhorn is from World War II, and then skip and you go to Christiane Amanpour. But so that the stories have to be told. Women have to tell their stories. That in each phase of women gaining equal opportunity and equal pay and equal respect, there are stages, and be aware of what you are going through and adjust. That there are people you can look up to that you've never heard of before, and you can learn from what they did. And then, this is how far we've gone, and just keep going.
Great. Okay. Multiple questions from Alan Dodds-Frank. Hello, Elizabeth. Great to see you. Nearly 44 years after the second trial of Marvin Mandel. I don't know who that is.
Former governor of Maryland.
Okay. Forgive me since I have not read the book yet, but do Urate and Edie Lederer make appearances? I was stunned to hear you say Ken Burns omitted fire in the lake. Have you ever confronted him about that omission or asked him to revisit the list?
Urate is in the book. Edie Lederer comes too late to the war to be included. And I resisted putting a list of all the wonderful women who did show up in Vietnam because I knew I'd miss somebody. So unless I made I wrote this as much as possible as a narrative. In other words, much more novel system. So I didn't want to push things in. So all the women, thank you. Unfortunately, there were not a lot of us. And Ken Burns, it's really hard to get through to Ken Burns.
Mm-hmm. Have you tried?
I did, and I just, there was another way that Katrine made a documentary about what's 4th of July guy, born on the 4th of July. Ron Kovic. She made an early documentary of that. And then he wrote his autobiography and made a movie. And he consistently did not give her, obvious credit. Katrine has died, as has Kate, so I couldn't interview her. So I tried to reach Kovic, and it got nothing. It's very hard.
Yeah. I think Alan had one more question. Wait a minute, that didn't. Sorry, pushed the wrong button there. Also from Alan Dodds Frank, was the effort by the US government to conceal the bombing of Cambodia the worst offense by the government in that war? That
you're talking about is 1969, Alan. And that was one of the possible items on Nixon's impeachment. Speaking of impeachments, and worst, I wouldn't even begin to say what was worst. No, the level of destruction. There are libraries full of books about who believes the level of his destruction, what we did and didn't know, and so on and so forth. But I'm not going to answer that one.
Okay. Another NPR question here. Deborah Amos, are you surprised that most war correspondents are now women, especially in the Middle East? Ann Barnard, Liz Sly, Alice Fordham.
Thanks, Deborah. In fact, in a way, no, because all of you at NPR were so great. But the watching, not just my colleagues during the Vietnam War, but watching as your editor, it was amazing the drive, the perspective and things. But also I think it's that, and I don't know how to say this without being weird, but women have been more willing to make the sacrifices in a way than men have. And men are going to say no, but in that sense, that's the best answer I can give. But no, I guess I'm not surprised.
Okay. Brooke Kroger wants to know, is there a count of how many women actually reported from the war? She's seen the number 75. Does that sound right?
The number that you will get is 75. And I went through that, and I had I won't say majority because I'm very bad at math, but a good number are wives and office managers. And they got the press credentials to go to the PX. So that the wives of correspondents all of a sudden show up as a correspondent when they never wrote a thing. Others came through and through friendliness, got it. So I do in 10 years, I would say dozens were actually living in Vietnam or Cambodia or Laos and as reporters. A lot of people came through. They, for a week or so parachuting in, but I would say just a few dozen. It's very hard, but when you go through the list, and I've had conversations with other reporters, women, we had so much trouble just figuring that out because it was a catch-all.